We are going to talk later about, we're going to mention this real quick, and we won't give you many details, but photo ID is in trouble. As you know, it's going to be reviewed by the Supreme Court. And apparently the legislators over there have not planned any contingency. They didn't apparently think that they were going to have any kind of a legal challenge. They don't know how they're going to pay to have anyone respond to it. The only respondent listed in the suit for the Supreme Court is Mark Ritchie, who is out campaigning against photo ID. In other words, he will be the guy responding.
He's the defendant, right? He's
the defendant. Don't expect him to defend it. Where are the legislative leaders? What are they doing? Why aren't they at least making an effort to figure out how they're going to defend this?
We're going to talk about it this morning, right?
It's ridiculous.
The issue is by this Friday, somebody who is interested in the outcome of this dispute that the ACLU
and the League
has sued
of Communist Voters
has sued or started a lawsuit naming Mark Ritchie, the Secretary of State, as essentially the defendant, saying, we don't think this question for the ballot initiative on photo ID is clear enough, and therefore you, defendant, Secretary of State, can't put it on the ballot. Well, he doesn't support it. But here's the thing.
They won't even defend their own stuff.
An interested party can intervene by this Friday in the lawsuit and take a lead role. The most interested party would be the legislature that passed the ballot initiative.
Amen.
And they're the ones that need to step up and say, look, this is not only clear, this is necessary, and they're not. Apparently, there's a question whether they're going to do it, Bob.
Well, here's the thing. They need to decide by today if they're going to do it, because they got to get legal representation, and they've got to figure out what their story is going to be.
Can't they just have
what their defense is?
Can't they just have the lawyer they're paying to defend all the sexual harassment claims? Just do that one, too.
I mean, the thing that's upsetting about this is the leadership that passed this, and this is probably the signature achievement of the legislature. They like to talk about Reform 2.0 and everything else, but the most important thing they did was photo ID. And that's the one thing everyone understands. It's the one thing that really cuts across party lines. It's the one bipartisan piece of legislation that they passed is this amendment that you can vote on for photo ID, but it's never going to make it to the ballot if they don't defend it.
Well,
and now they won't even defend it. And it's because why? Senjum, where are you? Mr. Zellers, where are you? The Speaker of the House, what are you doing? We'll talk about that after 8 as well.
It doesn't stop with those two. They might be the names and the leads, but where are the rest of the members pounding down their doors saying, look?
My understanding is there's been lots of questions been asked by certain people in the conservative, coalition.
Here we go again. I'm sorry. I'm tired of questions. I'm tired of, I asked, I tried. There's a guy in the corner office. We tried to do all this good stuff, and all he does is veto it. Stop giving me excuses and start doing the job you were sent to do.
Well, if you have time today, it would be advisable to call the Speaker's office and the Majority Leader's office and ask them where are they on photo ID and what are they doing. And you'll have to listen to a bunch of nonsense, but the main thing is that people call them and say, because if you want it, you're going to have to stand up and push for it again because they're piddling around.
Wow.
The ACLU, Common Cause, the League of Women Voters, have challenged photo ID or voter ID as an amendment in front of the Minnesota Supreme Court. And our understanding is the court's ruling will be final. I don't know that it could be appealed to anyone else except the U.S. Supreme Court.
They've requested an injunction which would prevent them from
putting this on the ballot. And again, they're not doing anything illegal. This is their right. When you pass something like this, the other side tries to stop it. This is how things work. They did it with concealed carry, and they'll do it for other things.
They'll do it with a marriage amendment, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. This particular complaint in front of the state Supreme Court lists Mark Ritchie as the respondent, which means Mark Ritchie, who is the Secretary of State of Minnesota, would be the defendant in this case. He would be arguing, to have the amendment placed on the ballot, except for one tiny little problem. Mark Ritchie is campaigning actively against voter ID and against the amendment. So who's going to defend this if Mark Ritchie is basically against it? That's the question.
Ordinarily, the Attorney General would jump in and defend it on behalf of the Secretary of State. Oh, yeah, but there's this other problem. The Attorney General, Lori Swanson, she, too, is opposed to people identifying who they are by way of a picture before they vote.
Right. These people believe it disenfranchises, and we, again, across the nation, there is no proof of disenfranchisement, and I will simply say this, because this is what one of the Supreme Court justices said, U.S. Supreme Court justices said on this issue. Basically, whenever you have a system and it has been in place for a while, People figure out how to game the system, so it's not unusual that you would suggest that it be changed up every now and then. And I think that's probably the most, even if you are on the fence with photo ID or voter ID, that is probably the most insightful thing that I've heard.
Wow.
There's certainly no evidence that people are disenfranchised with voter ID. But I'm sorry, I don't want to re-argue the photo ID case.
No, I'm not re-arguing. I'm going to add this. You got to wonder, when 70 to 80% of Minnesotans, regardless of their political persuasion, think that it's a reasonable requirement that somebody identify who they are before they vote with a photo ID, and the most partisan people, and they all happen to be Democrats, are going ballistic that they don't want this to happen. That's got to beg the question. But here we are. Well, we've got a lawsuit. We got a lawsuit that's been commenced this Friday. By the way, you got a defendant, Mark Ritchie, who's not going to defend.
Can I stop one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
The key thing here is that the Minnesota legislature, which passed this,
that's where I was going,
is not defending it.
That's where I was going.
What's the deal?
Well, I mean, we don't know that they're not defending. They have until this Friday to intervene in the lawsuit, which has been done all the time, folks. The legislature, back under Steve Swigum when he was the speaker, back when Tim Paulini was the governor and you had a shutdown, I think it was 2005, Bob, they do this all the time. They commence an action or they intervene in one on behalf of the legislature as a representative of the people. In this case, they passed the ballot initiative. They're the ones that are the most interested parties in making sure that it's on the ballot next fall.
My understanding is that Kurt Zellers and Dave Senjum are reluctant because this will cost the Senate and the House, respectively, about $50,000. It'll cost about $100,000 to defend this, and they're concerned they don't have enough money. So your voter ID, you people who pushed for this, who fought for this, who called legislators, remember when we went nuts about this, earlier in the year, it is all for naught because these guys cannot simply defend the stuff that they passed. Wow. So here's what you need to do. We want you to call the Speaker's office today and the Senate Majority Leader's office and give them a piece of your mind and tell them to get off their asses and defend this because they have to decide this. If they're going to do something, they have to decide today. Here's the number. This is Kurt Zellers, the Speaker of the House, his number, 651-296-5502, and Senjum's number is 651-296-3903. We'll post them on Facebook if you want. I just threw it over to Tom to do this, but what is wrong with these people?
All I'm going to say to you is this. I am a Republican, and I'm proud of it, and you give me a hard time all the time of carrying the Republican flag and defending, that's your job. You're going to defend these guys. I have a message for the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. If you do not take steps to make sure that this ballot initiative is on, not only should you never be in leadership again, you should not be running for office. This is exactly what the people want you to do, is to make sure that we have integrity in the outcome of our elections. This is something that is paramount in your job. And if you're going to use the excuse today, if you're going to tell us today that now I'm concerned about the money, we are going to make sure your ears bleed listening to the fact that you raised spending in our general fund by over $3 billion, which included K-12 shifts and tobacco bond sales. If that's what you're going to do, you're going to listen to that over and over for the next several months, and you will rue the day that you didn't do the job that you were sent to do. This is the most, if that's true, Bob. Now, here's the thing. You got me going because you have suggested that it's your understanding that they don't already have a plan. I can't believe that. I got to believe that both these guys are already sitting down and saying, all right, who are we going to have handle this? How are they going to make sure? Because here's the argument. The argument is the question's not clear enough, right? The question simply is, are we going to amend our Constitution to, in addition to requiring that somebody be 18 years of age, be a resident, a citizen of the United States, and a resident or qualify as residency in the state of Minnesota, in addition to those requirements, we're going to say, and you must identify you are who you say you are with a photo ID before you vote.
Here's the thing. I don't want to argue the whole thing. They passed the damn thing. They've passed voter ID. They've passed voter ID. It's going to be on the ballot unless it gets essentially injuncted by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If they don't defend themselves, that's what's going to happen. So here's the thing.
Can't believe they will.
I think they're incompetent.
Bob, again, unless you've got specific information.
I have specific information.
Really?
The specific information I have is that they don't know what to do. Now, that's what I have. That's my information. They don't know what to do.
You know what?
I can't believe it either, but if it's true,
then it's
true.
If it's true, this is going to be a bigger failure than anything else.
Or if you're cynical, then there are certain people who are interested in their political futures who are afraid to push this because they don't want to do anything controversial that might interrupt their future as a whatever.
If it's some of these people you're referring to, they don't have a political future if this is what they're going to do.
Davis and Emmer, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130. We will post the numbers for Kurt Zeller's office and Dave Senjum's office on Facebook, the Twin Cities Facebook site. Maybe you can get them up on TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com as well, because people are starting to ask on Facebook, hey, what numbers do we call? If you want photo ID, you're going to have to push these legislators to fight for their own legislation. In other words, just to summarize, the voter ID I call it photo ID, but it's voter ID, is up in front of the Supreme Court. What is being asked is that the Supreme Court issue an injunction so that the voter ID amendment is not on the ballot in November. This is something that at least 70%, sometimes 80+%, depending on the poll that you look at, of the people are for. I don't want to re-argue or refight the voter ID issue. The fact is the legislature passed it, and they passed it over the objections of the governor, who vetoed a bill, and then they passed it so that it would be as an amendment, okay? And here we have the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader, both of which apparently are unwilling to defend this. Why do I say that? The respondent in this case in front of the Supreme Court is going to be Mark Ritchie, who is the Secretary of State. I would assume that the Attorney General of the state would argue for Mark Ritchie. Both of these individuals, elected officials, have already indicated their displeasure with and opposition to voter ID.
Well, they're traveling the state, and they're actually campaigning against it. Bob,
right.
Now that I've settled down a little bit, because you poked the bear, and I got a little, upset. But now that I've settled down, can I just ask you, why wouldn't the legislature want to defend this ballot?
That's what I said earlier.
Give me a reason. I mean, it makes no sense. And if they're going to talk about the $50,000 to $100,000, again, that didn't seem to be a big issue.
You asked the question, I should answer you. Okay?
Yeah.
The objections are it's going to be too expensive. We don't have the money for this. We'd have to use taxpayer dollars for it. We don't want to do that. And just a thumbnail estimate would be about $100,000 to get somebody to go argue this case for the legislature at the Supreme Court. Maybe it's cheaper than that. I don't know. Maybe it's more expensive. But that's just a thumbnail figure. So that's $50,000 for the Senate and $50,000 for the House. They both got to come up with to do this. Then there are all these incredibly wealthy contributors out there that are, always saying that they're all for. Why couldn't they help out with the defense of this? Is it possible that they could?
Sure.
So there's that. And on top of that, the other objection would be I'm a little bit more cynical about, and that is I believe that the leaders do not want anything controversial on the ballot. They would like to have things be they would just leave same sex on there, which is also going to get challenged, I'm sure. And then you're going to have just a very non-controversial ballot, and we can run on Reform 2.0, which no one knows what that is. All I know is the last time somebody said 2.0 to me, I think of the old manuals that used to come with the IBM computers.
Well, and I'm sorry.
DOS 2.0, that's what I think of.
Yeah, the argument that you're saving me money in 2020 or over come on. That's it. Future legislatures can all change that stuff. The issue is here and now today, and the ballot initiative. I mean, this took how many years to get it on the ballot?
Many years, and a lot of work by a lot of people to do it.
Isn't the issue that you're giving the people the opportunity to make the decision, and now your attitude is going to be, well, we can't defend the vote that we took. We can't defend it, so we're not going to.
And how much money did they spend this biennium in the budget? Was it something like $5.5? No, it's $38 billion. Yeah, they don't have $100,000 to defend their own legislation.
It's like 35.6 at the end of the day.
Anyway, we had this conversation yesterday after we got off the air. We were talking about defending positions. We were talking about, for example, what's going on in Wisconsin, which is a great point. That when you stand up, and Tom, you've said this from the beginning, that when you stand up and actually defend a position like voter ID or cutting the budget or whatever it is that you believe is central, right to work, for example, which they also didn't defend this year. But when you the fear is among the moderates, when I stand up and fight for these things, I'm going to lose votes. You have always said from the beginning, when you stand up as a man and say, or woman, this is what I believe, I'm willing to throw the dice and we'll see what happens, you can win.
Yeah, I got news for all you folks that claim that you're going to govern from a little right of center or a little left of center. That's great. It doesn't matter where you put yourself on the political spectrum. The question is, are you willing to stand for something? I think it was Ronald Reagan that said, if you won't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. In this case, you know what? It's a time for choosing, Bob. We are at a crossroads no matter what the issue, whether it's our elections, our economic issues, the regulatory burdens, all the stuff we talk about. This country is literally at a crossroads, and it is a time for choosing. And you mealy-mouthed, middle-of-the-road politicians, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, or you're crazy enough to call yourself, I'm an independent, which makes me better than everybody else, apparently, because I'm smarter. I don't get down into the mud. I had somebody, by the way, tell me years ago, there's no such thing. One day you're going to have to climb down off that fence, and you're going to be on one side or the other, and you're going to have to get dirty with everybody else.
Even if you run as an independent, you got to vote on something once in a while.
If you will take a position, and you will articulate why in a respectful, civil manner, and you maybe are willing to learn and be respectful of somebody else's position, but you don't give up yours, if you stop trying to be something to everybody, if you stand for something that you believe in and be passionate about it, more people will vote for that position, Bob.
Well, and the other thing is people talk about, they'll always harken back to, and the Democrats talk about Reagan all the time, even though they criticize Republicans for talking about Reagan. I don't want to hear anybody talk about Reagan. Nobody in their 40s wants to hear anything about Reagan. It isn't about that. Now they're starting to write about Eisenhower, and these politicians need to be like Eisenhower. This time that we're living in is nothing like the 50s. It is nothing like the 80s. It is nothing like the 30s. It's this time. We're living in our time. And so these issues, because we have these problems that we have, need to be addressed. Voter ID is an example of those issues. We are concerned about the integrity of our election process. We think people who vote in elections should have to prove who they are before they vote. It's that simple. You have to prove who you are to get an EBT card.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you can't prove who you are to vote. And if that's the case, then it's not that hard to get an ID. The case has been argued in and out, up and down. The arguments have been heard. The legislators have voted. They want to put it on the ballot so you get the chance to vote. Except now the legislators are afraid to defend themselves.
I just can't believe that. I mean, we got till Friday for somebody to intervene on behalf of the legislature. I'm going to tell you,
no, for the legislature to intervene on behalf of itself.
Well, I meant the attorney, but yeah, the legislature on behalf of the people that put them there.
That's right.
I just can't believe that. You know what? If I overstep because there is a plan and went after these two guys, my apologies. But if they're not going to do it, I'm not kidding. They are going to hear about this forever. This is what you were sent to do. You didn't have any problem spending the money in 2011, and now here you are in 2012 telling us that $50,000 to $100,000. I mean, how much money is being spent to defend that ridiculous lawsuit by the former communications guy that's over in the Senate?
Good question. And that better not be the reason why they don't have enough money. Yeah. Look, here's Speaker Zeller's number, 651-296-5502. And here is Senjim's number, 651. He's the Senate Majority Leader, 296-3903. Call him up and tell him to, I hate to say it, but I will. Get off your ass and get in there and fight.
Yeah, get some courage and leave.
You can be a man, Dad.
It's the lion from The Wizard of Oz.
Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130. Davis and Emmer back tomorrow. Thanks for taking my call, Tom.
Wow.
Emmer back.